Have you ever looked around your life completely exhausted, drained, and utterly empty, only to realize that almost every single person closest to you acts like a psychological black hole? You give them your time, your energy, your empathy, and your endless patience. You listen to their endless drama, you help them clean up the messes they created, and in return you get absolute chaos, disrespect, or worse, you are completely ignored the moment you actually need something from them. You sit there alone in the quiet moments feeling entirely used, and you might be thinking that the universe simply hates you. You might genuinely believe that you are somehow cursed with terrible luck, destined to be a permanent magnet for narcissists, emotional vampires, and incredibly selfish people who only remember your name when their own world is falling apart. But I need you to listen to me very carefully right now. It is not bad luck. The universe is not punishing you. You are not a passive victim of some cosmic joke. The brutal and uncomfortable reality is that you are attracting these toxic people on a subconscious level. It is a direct result of a deeply ingrained psychological mechanism that you probably do not even realize is running on a continuous loop in the background of your mind. Right after this, you are going to see the exact reason why the most toxic, manipulative individuals in any given room will almost always lock eyes with you, bypass everyone else, and walk straight toward you. It is going to make you incredibly uncomfortable, because it forces you to look at the one thing you have been running away from your entire life. It is not just about how broken or manipulative they are. It is about the invisible yet overwhelmingly powerful signal you are broadcasting to them every single day. I'm going to show you how your absolute greatest trait, the very empathy you pride yourself on, the kindness you define yourself by, is actually the exact bait that lures these emotional parasites into your life. You have been told your entire life that being a good moral person means being infinitely accommodating, infinitely forgiving, and infinitely available. But that is the exact psychological lie, keeping you trapped in an endless cycle of betrayal and exhaustion. By the end of this, you will understand the undeniable truth about what clinical psychologists call the savior complex. You will see clearly how your completely non-existent boundaries are acting as a neon sign, an open invitation for emotional destruction. You will discover the hidden dopamine reward loop that actually makes you addicted to fixing broken people. More importantly, I promise you will learn exactly how to build an impenetrable psychological fortress. You will know exactly how to identify and filter out the emotional vampires before they even get close enough to drain your energy. And you will do this without losing the genuine empathy that makes you who you are. You will finally learn how to stop acting as an unpaid, unappreciated rehabilitation center for emotionally unavailable people, and start protecting your peace like your life depends on it. Let us get into it. Most people walk through life believing that relationships are just a game of chance. You meet someone, they seem nice at first, and then slowly the mask slips off. You find yourself trapped in the type 1 mindset, which we can call the unlucky magnet. In this state, you genuinely believe that you are just a victim of circumstance. You think to yourself, why do I always find the broken ones? Why do the narcissists always flock to me, as if you have a target painted on your back? You probably complain to your friends about how unfair the dating pool is or how toxic your workplace environment happens to be. You look at other people who have stable, boring, healthy relationships, and you wonder what secret they know that you do not. But the truth is, there is no secret and there is no curse. You are not cursed. You are just operating with a completely fundamentally flawed psychological blueprint. To understand why this happens, I want you to imagine your life, your emotional capacity, and your empathy as a beautiful, incredibly warm and inviting house. This house is fully furnished, there is food on the table, there is a fire in the fireplace, and it is a wonderful place to be. Now, a normal person with healthy psychological boundaries has a fence around this house. They have a front door with a deadbolt. When someone approaches, they look through the peephole, they ask who is there, they verify the intentions of the visitor, and only then do they decide if they will unlock the door. But you do not do that. Because of how deeply you value kindness and empathy, you have not only removed the fence, you have taken the front door completely off its hinges. You have left the lights on, the music playing, and a giant neon sign outside that says everyone is welcome no matter how broken you are. Now think about who is walking down the street looking for a house to enter. A healthy person, a person with their own stable home, does not need to crash on your couch. They might stop by to say hello, but they have their own life to manage. The people who are desperately looking for an open door are the emotional drifters, the narcissists, the manipulators, and the people who completely lack the ability to self-regulate. They are emotional vampires starving for a host. When they walk down the street and see houses with locked doors, they keep walking. They do not have the time or the energy to break in. But when they see your house with no door and absolute unconditional warmth pouring out of it, they do not just walk in. They move in. They take over the living room, they eat all the food, they trash the furniture, and when you finally get the courage to ask them to be a little bit quieter, they look at you like you are the crazy one. They make you feel guilty for even asking, because you are the one who left the door open in the first place. But here is where things get truly dark, and this is the part most people are completely terrified to admit to themselves. You did not leave the door open by accident. You left it open because on some subconscious level you actually want them to walk in. I know that sounds insane. You are probably thinking, why would I ever want someone to come in and destroy my peace? But what happens next is the exact psychological trap that keeps you stuck. We have to look at what clinical psychologists call the savior complex and how it fundamentally alters your brain chemistry. You see, you are not just type 1, the unlucky magnet. You have actually evolved into type 2, the fixer. The fixer does not just attract broken people, they actively require broken people to feel a sense of self-worth. Let me break down the neuroscience of this because it is absolutely fascinating and terrifying at the same time. When you meet someone who is completely put together, someone who does not need your help, you actually feel a little bit bored. You might even feel anxious, because if they do not need you to fix them, what value do you actually bring to their life? But when you meet someone who is a mess, someone with a tragic backstory, someone who has been misunderstood by the whole world, your brain lights up like a fireworks display. When you step in to listen to their problems, when you offer them the unconditional support that no one else ever gave them, your brain releases a massive surge of dopamine. Dopamine is the exact same neurotransmitter responsible for addiction. It is the reward chemical. In that exact moment, you feel powerful. You feel needed. You feel like you are finally doing something incredibly meaningful. You get high on the feeling of being the only person who can truly understand and save this broken individual. You are not just being nice, you are participating in a subconscious dopamine reward loop. They get a free therapist, a free punching bag, and a permanent source of emotional validation. And what do you get? You get the temporary intoxicating illusion that you are indispensable. You get to avoid dealing with your own internal emptiness because you are entirely consumed by their endless chaotic drama. I used to think that my ability to absorb everyone else's pain made me incredibly strong. I wore my exhaustion like a badge of honor. I would tell myself that I am just a deeply empathetic person who cares too much. I thought that if I just loved them hard enough, if I just showed them enough patience, eventually they would heal and they would love me back with the same intensity. But reality does not work like a Hollywood movie. The absolute devastating truth about toxic people is that they do not want to be fixed. They just want to be accommodated. They are not looking for a savior to heal them, they are looking for an enabler to sustain their dysfunction. And this leads us to the concept of codependency. Codependency is not about love. It is about control dressed up as love. When you have weak boundaries, when you cannot say no without feeling a crushing wave of guilt, you are essentially telling the toxic person that their comfort is vastly more important than your basic psychological survival. You teach them exactly how to treat you. Every single time they cross a line, disrespect your time, or manipulate your emotions, and you respond by staying silent or apologizing just to keep the peace, you are handing them a manual on how to destroy you. Let us look at a very specific example so you can see exactly how this plays out in real time. Imagine you have a friend or a partner who constantly flakes on your plans. They cancel at the last minute, they never ask how your day was, but the second they have a crisis, their phone calls become incredibly urgent. A person with healthy boundaries would immediately recognize this imbalance. They would step back, they would communicate the issue, and if the behavior did not change, they would cut the cord. But what does the fixer do? The fixer rationalizes the toxic behavior. You tell yourself that they are just going through a really hard time right now. You tell yourself that they had a traumatic childhood, so they do not know how to communicate properly. You literally do the psychological gymnastics for them. You become their defense attorney arguing against your own well-being. You do this because establishing a boundary feels infinitely more terrifying than enduring the disrespect. Saying no feels like a physical threat to your nervous system. You are terrified that if you finally stand up for yourself, if you finally demand basic respect, they will call you selfish, they will get angry, or worst of all, they will abandon you. So you swallow your anger, you push down your resentment, and you keep the door wide open. You let the emotional vampire take another bite, because the pain of being drained feels safer and more familiar than the absolute terror of being alone. But that is not all. There is an even deeper layer to this dynamic that is almost entirely invisible until you know exactly what to look for. The people you are attracting, these toxic individuals, they have an incredibly sophisticated radar for your lack of boundaries. They do not just magically appear, they test you. It is a calculated subconscious psychological process. When they first meet you, they will push a very small boundary. They will make a slightly inappropriate joke, or they will ask for a favor that is just a tiny bit too demanding. They are waiting to see what you will do. If you push back, if you set a firm boundary, they will immediately back off and look for an easier target. But if you smile nervously, if you accommodate them, if you sacrifice a little bit of your comfort to make them happy, alarm bells ring in their head. They know immediately that they have found a host. They know that your empathy is actually just a beautiful mask, hiding your absolute inability to protect yourself. This means that your kindness, your incredible boundless compassion is being weaponized against you. You are literally funding your own psychological destruction. You are pouring your clean, pure energy into a black hole, expecting it to eventually fill up, but a black hole has no bottom. It will take and take and take until there is absolutely nothing left of you, until you are a hollow shell of resentment and exhaustion. So how do we stop this? How do we break the cycle? If your entire identity is built around being the good person, the savior, the one who never gives up on anyone, how do you suddenly change the blueprint without feeling like you are turning into a cold, heartless monster? Because the truth is, you do not want to stop being empathetic. Empathy is a beautiful, rare gift in a world that is becoming increasingly disconnected. You just need to learn how to stop bleeding out. You need to learn the difference between helping someone and allowing someone to destroy you. The shift you need to make is absolutely monumental. It requires tearing down the entire foundation of how you relate to other people and rebuilding it from the ground up. It requires stepping out of the role of the fixer and stepping into an entirely new psychological framework. You have to prepare yourself for the fact that when you start doing this, the toxic people in your life are going to lose their minds. They will accuse you of changing. They will say you have become selfish. They will use every single manipulation tactic in the book to try and force you back into submission. Because when you stop being their free emotional supply, they actually have to face their own reflection, and they are terrified of doing that. Right now, you are standing at the absolute edge of a massive psychological breakthrough. You have recognized the open door, you have seen the emotional vampires, and you have understood the dopamine addiction that keeps you tied to them. But understanding the problem is only half the battle. What comes next is the cure. What comes next is the exact blueprint for turning your empathy from a fatal weakness into an impenetrable shield. This brings us to the ultimate evolution of your psychological journey. This is where you step entirely out of the fixer mindset and become type 3, which is the gatekeeper. You need to understand something incredibly important right now, and you need to let it sink deep into your subconscious. Your immense capacity for empathy is not a flaw. It is not a disease. It is an absolute superpower. The problem was never your beautiful heart. The problem was your completely non-existent security system. You have been treating your empathy and your emotional energy like a public park where anyone can walk in at any time, leave all of their trash on the grass, and walk out without facing any consequences. But your empathy is actually a highly exclusive VIP lounge. Access to your time, your energy, and your emotional support must be earned through mutual respect, through consistent reciprocity, and through basic human decency. When you transition into the gatekeeper, you stop being a passive victim of other people's emotional chaos. You realize that saying no is a complete sentence. You do not need to over-explain yourself. You do not need to write a 3-page apology text for simply protecting your peace. The gatekeeper understands deeply that setting a boundary is not an act of aggression against the other person. It is an act of profound self-preservation. It is the ultimate form of self-respect. I want you to really think about the toxic people you are so desperately terrified of losing. What exactly are you losing if they walk away? You are losing sleep. You are losing your sanity. You are losing your own identity. You are holding on to people who are actively drowning you simply because you are afraid of swimming alone. Let me ask you a very serious question, and I want you to be brutally honest with yourself. If you woke up tomorrow and completely stopped fixing everyone around you, if you completely stopped absorbing their emotional garbage, who would you actually be? Are you truly terrified of losing them, or are you actually terrified of finally having the time and the silence to look at your own life? If you redirected all of that incredibly powerful energy, all of that patience, and all of that love back into yourself, what could you actually achieve? Would you finally start living for yourself? Would you finally feel a sense of profound inner peace that does not depend on managing someone else's daily crisis? The exact moment you put the front door back on its hinges, the moment you lock that deadbolt, the emotional vampires in your life are going to panic. They will knock loudly. They will try to pick the lock. They will call you selfish and they will call you cruel. Let them. Let them be angry. Their anger is simply the tantrum of a parasite that has just been completely cut off from its primary host. It is the ultimate absolute confirmation that your boundary is working perfectly. You are never responsible for their emotional reaction to your boundary. You are only responsible for upholding it. You have to accept the absolute brutal reality that some people are simply committed to their own destruction, and it is not your job to jump into the fire just to keep them company. Your only job is to protect your own energy. The world does not need you to be a burned-out, exhausted martyr who sacrifices everything for people who do not care. The world needs you to be fully alive, completely grounded, and violently protective of your own peace. Taking this step changes everything, but creating this psychological fortress is just the beginning. The absolute most dangerous manipulator you will ever face is not the loud, aggressive, toxic person. It is the quiet, covert one. The one who plays the victim so perfectly that you do not even realize you are being controlled until you are completely trapped. In the next video, I am going to expose exactly how the covert, vulnerable narcissist rewires your brain, and I will give you the exact psychological phrase that instantly neutralizes their control over you. You absolutely cannot afford to miss that breakdown, so do not forget to subscribe right now, because that next video could literally save you from years of hidden emotional abuse.